So I'm here with Katie Ciemiewicz. Katie, what year did you graduate LBC?
I graduated in 2003, the spring of 2003.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. And so you did secondary ed back in those days. Was it social studies certification or social science?
I have the big cert. So for a while, there was a big cert that covered everything. And we took like a 6-hour secondary education exam. Then they broke it apart. But when I did it, we had to get certified for anthropology, archaeology, psychology, sociology, political science, and then American history and world history. So I have the big cert from the state. I'm not quite sure how it's set up now. I know for a while, like I said, they broke it up into like a civics versus social sciences, but I had the big social studies cert. So I'm certified to teach all of those things besides just history. So from K to 12.
Okay.
Or not K to 12, 6 to 12. I'm so sorry, 6 to 12.
No, it's okay. And so what did you, so once you graduated, what was that like? Did you get a job right off the bat?
I did. So I student taught in the spring of 2003. I was out in my placement in the fall in 2002, and I had a really interesting placement. I was teaching anthropology and archaeology at Palmyra High School. Those weren't necessarily my wheelhouse strong suits, and I had a really interesting mentor. The guy that I was with there, normally they ease you in where they give you a little bit of time because you spent some time with them in the fall. And on the first day of class, he said, "See ya." And I had them till the very last day of class, all 3 blocks, all day long. So wow. I got thrust in, but I think it made me more prepared. And I was observed from the education department and from our history liaisons a lot earlier because I was the only one teaching. So they came in. He purposely would sometimes do some stuff to make me think on my feet when he knew I was getting observed, which at the time was torturous for, a kid looking to get a job and where it was going. But he made me a better teacher because I certainly could pull off lessons when you have those snafus that happen. So I started to put my resume out. Back then, there weren't all the websites and stuff. You had to actually mail your resumes and look for job openings, and the college mailed my transcripts and stuff. So I graduated in May. By June, I had 4 interviews, and by the middle of June, I had 4 job offers in schools in Berks County where I wanted to teach. So I was lucky. So in the month of graduating, I had 4 job offers at some pretty good schools. So I kind of had my pick of what I wanted. So I got a job within a month of graduating.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So what kinds of, what was your first year or your first couple of years like in your trial by fire
period? It was a different world than it is now. And I'm really glad for the new teachers coming in. There was a lot of old guard still moving out, and they kind of went, you earn your way into honors classes, and new people got the crap classes nobody wanted to teach. So one of the things with social studies, whether you're teaching government or middle school, due to least restrictive environment kinds of stuff, you're going to get every kid in that district. So like we have a life skills classroom, and they might be pulled for English, they might be pulled for math, they might even be pulled for science. You will get every single one of them because there is not in any district. So that was a big eye opener. And they tended to chuck those because those were the classes people didn't want to teach at the new teachers, when the ones with the more experience should be having some of those, because that's a lot to no matter where you're teaching, to have more of those classes than not. You're dealing with behavioral things, IEPs, 504 plans, legal things. In the high school, you might get probation officers. There's a whole lot of stuff. So it was all of the extra stuff I wasn't ready for. And the history degree, it definitely taught me. I know there was a little bit more of a gap with the education department, which I know has been sealed up a little bit more, but I wasn't ready for 11th graders reading at a 1st grade level. I had all these ideas of what I wanted to do, and I knew how to teach them, but I wasn't ready to give them totally different reading texts and stuff like that, especially in a time where there wasn't a lot of computer access. You didn't have a one-to-one classroom where I could assign them things off of different digital websites. So it was a lot of that. I was there on weekends. I was there a lot at night, and it's a lot of getting your feet set. And one of the best things I think I did is, I'm not a huge journaler, but I marked down every day what worked, what didn't work, like what bombed, what didn't bomb, so that when I went back and revisited it, you could go back and revisit and fine tune lessons as opposed to trying to create everything from scratch. But the first couple years there, I taught almost every class that we have. So it certainly was a trial by fire, and it just makes you ready and think on your feet, and it makes you realize how well prepared you need to be for class, and always have extra that you might not use rather than be under prepared. So it was
Right.
good. I mean, it was eye-opening, but it was good.
So when you said the thing about the education department, it's that they didn't have any classes on special ed.
Right. So now that is a big, I know that from what I understand from being there before, that they make, which is good. I didn't. So we didn't have any of that. I mean, we had kids that we had were special ed, but all of the legality and the paperwork of the SDIs, IEPs, the meetings, one of the best things I can tell you is to record, and stuff that you think you're going to remember, you might not. And that the statute of limitations is 7 years after they graduate. So I still have folders of parent contact in case they would decide to come back and sue the district. And I've been called into meetings where I go in and I go, this is what I've done. Here's my documentation, boom, boom, boom. And the lawyer goes, you're not the one we're worried about, bye. And then I breathe easy and walk out because it's somebody else. So it was learning that and just the type of personality that I was, but making sure you're recording, nope, I did reach out to contact this parent on this day, or saving the email where you tried to, because a lot of times it's explicitly written. And if I wasn't just the neurotic, detailed oriented person and reading all of those things, I think I would have been really, really surprised by that, because there were I had a kid that I had to email his mom 3 times a day as an 11th grader. I had to email her in the morning and say, yes, he stopped in with me. I had to email her during class to let her know that, yes, he went to lunch, okay. And then I had to email her at the end of the day to let her know what his homework was, even though I had it posted other places. So sometimes there are very specific things that if you're not paying attention to, legally, they're going to sue you because you need to be carrying that out as a classroom teacher. So that was just some stuff. And I hear that there's been a lot better reaching out. That was some of the overwhelming, not ready for that kind of thing with my history degree.
Wow. So what kinds of, what kinds of advice would you have for people either starting out in the school teacher racket?
I think to be flexible, and to realize, especially in this world where everything's changing, one of the good things I see coming out of this, there was a really big push for not just personalized learning, but that kids could learn individually on their laptops with one-to-one. And I'm always a big proponent of conversations, and that's from my education at LVC. I like small groups. I like small group discussions. I like reading in depth and trying to personalize it and do things like that, even if I have a class of 33. And I kind of fought tooth and nail with the, hey, they can learn from a computer. And I think one of the good things that's come out of COVID in this whole experience is that society and parents and administrators are going, no, kids need to be and have that human interaction. And I think as social studies educators, that's a really big piece. We're not teaching computer science. We're teaching them how to be engaged citizens of this world in our country. And that face-to-face talking is really important. And you being flexible and adjusting your expectations with it is good. There's a big focus on social emotional learning, and we're the perfect place to start that, because we're the perfect place to talk about empathy and talk about understanding different contexts in history and different people's ways of life. And I think that gives us a different advantage for kids to feel. It gives you a space to make your classroom a space where kids feel safe and comfortable. And that's really important in today's world. And I think we have a natural progression and leaping off point for that.
Mm-hmm. So how do you do that? How do you make students feel safe and comfortable?
So if you walk into my classroom, I try and make it as best I can, make it feel like you're walking into an organized chaos. There's all kinds of student art on the walls. I've hung up curtains. Before COVID, I used to have a whole bar where you could make yourself cocoa and tea. I had rugs. I had all kinds of informal seating so that you felt like you were kind of coming into my living room, but not quite as much. And like you could write stuff on my board, and it was a really informal kind of feel. And I never liked I didn't have desks. I had tables. I had them in groups. You constantly moved around so that you were in different positions with different people having lots of different small informal conversations. One of the things I think I tried to do well is I'm pretty upfront and direct. And I try and be fair, and sometimes it might be tough, but I let kids know from the start that I'm doing it because I want to see you succeed. No matter if I'm teaching kids from a disadvantaged foster home that we have in our district to kids whose parents can afford to send them to Harvard or Yale, I'm looking out to make you be the best one that you can be. And I'm always going to be fair and tough, and I will tell you like what it is. And it's always a fresh start. The next day is a fresh new day. And I want you to feel comfortable in that you're allowed to make mistakes in here, because we all make mistakes. And I want to stretch you out of your comfort zone, but I need you to feel like you can stretch with me. So I let kids see I make mistakes. If I don't know something, I own it and I go, nope, I'm going to get back to you on that, because kids will call out your BS. So you got to try and be honest. And I think they need to see that you're genuine. If they see that you're genuine, I think that helps. And if you show a genuine interest, I try and go to everything from, I've been to UFC fights that I've had kids do, musicals, sporting events. I'm all over the place at everything to show them that I care about them outside of those walls as well. Chaperoning dances, I do a bunch of community service. I run a community service club. We have like this personalized learning time during homeroom. I run all kinds of random stuff then, where we sometimes meditate, we sometimes do yoga, we go for outdoor walks, like trying to reach different groups of kids. I have one where they bake with me down in the home ec rooms, which is totally outside of a social studies teacher, but it's important for them to get to know you as much as you feel comfortable as a person, but that they feel you're being genuine and you care about them as people. And I think that helps foster that reciprocating and that you listen to them. So I think I was always amazed at how many Big Tough football players liked a mug of Earl Grey. Like, it's amazing what just that mug of tea did to just calm people down and open up conversations at their table with kids I never forced it on them. It was just there. And to hear them like calling across the room, and that was always just a nice, and I had books and all kinds of stuff that I told them they were always allowed to touch and pick up and whatever they wanted. It'll be different full-time after COVID. I don't know what that's going to look like. So I'm going to have to work on different ways of making it feel still like, a more comfortable environment.
Katie, that is so you, and that is so amazing. That is, you just sound like such a awesome high school teacher.
Oh, no.
I'm sure they're very fortunate to have you. So what kinds of, I guess, so you've done this class a few times. So I'm always kind of, on the one hand, I am interested in what kinds of things you got out of LVC, what kinds of things you think they should do. And I guess I'll let you do that, and then I'll let you give your thoughts on that, and I'll tell you my biases or my perspective. But like, what things did you really like? I don't even mean like this is what I used in the classroom, but like, what did you get out of a school, like out of your LVC education? What things really worked for you?
I think the small class environment and the higher up I got in my history classes or interdisciplinary classes, you can't hide like you can hide at like a Penn State in a big lecture hall. Like, if I didn't do the reading, you knew I didn't do the reading. And that small direct approach, and it allowed, life happens, but rather than make excuses or try and soak into a background, I think it made you more accountable and more responsible as a human. It definitely made me take responsibility over my learning. I think the disconnect between, and I do think it was an advantage, and this is not, I never thought, LVC offered me great scholarships. I never thought, coming from the background I came from, I would be able to go to a school like LVC. So I didn't think that was in the cards for me. I definitely think I made out better having my history degree besides my education, that I didn't just go and get this general secondary education with a focus in social studies. I think in teaching upper level high school classes, you need to know your stuff. And I know my stuff because I have a history degree, not just an education. There's a place for that, I think, with elementary kids and teaching them phonics and teaching them how to read. And I'm glad there's a bigger connection, but when I went there, it was a lot of, I had to map my classes because they were only offered every other semester. And it wasn't on the history end, but I would have missed some education. Oh, wait, I forgot you had to student teach kind of type stuff that
right.
I wished. I wish that I would have loved to study abroad. My scholarships would have run out and none of the classes transferred back to allow me to get my certification. Like they wouldn't have been interchangeable under it. So that was a disappointment because
No
I think
problem.
that would have been really good for me, especially given the things I teach. It would have been good for me as a person. It would have been good for me as a teacher. So I wish there would have been a little bit more flexibility. But I think I am a very good writer and a good critical thinker because of you, especially, but because of LVC. And I think that's transferred into a whole other generation of kids because I think a lot of that is modeled on my kids at school where I go through stuff and they might not always like it. And I didn't necessarily always like some of your feedback, but it gave me room to grow. And I think I needed that. And I knew it came from a good place, even if it upset me. And that personalized, individualized, and just the critical outlook, especially with today and all of the media sources, I think that's one of the biggest things of how to, and that's one of the things you guys are going to have such an advantage on. This is what we do as historians. You have all of these sources and making sense of it. And that's such a critical skill in today's world so that not everything's coming off of freaking BuzzFeed and stuff like that, like teaching kids that. And not even if you're going to go into teaching, but wherever you go of making people be critical consumers of information, that's going to be your biggest legs up, period, hands down, and give you an advantage.
Yeah, I like the phrase somebody said, which is there is no such thing as fake news. There's only really lazy readers. And I think that's mainly the problem is that people just, well, that works. That's what I want to see.
It came to me. And ironically, they're algorithms to keep sending you the same dribble if they see you keep reading the same stuff.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. The algorithm will basically just make you more and more whatever rabbit hole you're going down. Yeah. Absolutely. No, so I mean, so my perspective is as somebody who's taught this class for a while is I think people can be too focused on like the end result, which is, like, oh, I need to get a job. And so I have to do this and I have to do that. The main thing to do is to take your classes, be really good at it and kind of trust the process.
I agree.
That they get more support on like how to put together a resume. And there's the whole Breeden Center, blah, 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 blah. And that's all good, but that's the tail. And the dog is the education and sort of just focus on classes you want to take and focus on getting really good at making a historical argument, which is hard
and getting stuff out of it. I mean, I don't know. I think that's one of the most frustrating things, kids, but I don't give them tests. I've been really influenced by, I don't really like tests. It's more essay and it's never right or wrong. It's making those historical arguments and substantiating your claims, whatever that's going to be. And that's going to serve you better in life. And take the classes that interest you, not the classes you think are going to be easy or the classes somebody told you about.
Right.
LVC offers enough variety. Your department offers enough variety and they might not be offered every year. So make sure you're watching for when they are offered to take those courses that are going to interest you in those special little niches that are either going to change you as a human or give you a leg up wherever you decide to go from here, whether it's law, whether it's teaching, whether it's something totally random. Take things that interest you and soak as much out of it because just that intellectual stimulation is good for you. So
yeah, no, that's right. I always, when students are coming in, I say like, if you go to LVC, you could go through and in 4 years, really just kind of coast along and drink a lot of beer and go to a lot of parties and play a lot of Xbox. Cause I always think what a guy would do, which is that's sort of it. And you can totally do that. And then you can also, at the same school, you can take classes that will completely blow your mind and change the way you think about everything. And you'll discover universes of information and perspectives. And you can go, especially like you, LVC does great by students who are like good, when they come in, but then they become fantastic because they do get a lot of individual attention and they write essays and you have several different people. Anyway, so any advice for them, either for the teachers or for the people in the classes? Because I know the teachers are like, the secondary ed students are always pretty I don't know what to say, concerned, worried. You know, they have lots of questions, and they'll probably come back and ask you lots of questions.
Well, that's okay, because I do better with questions, because I really don't like talking about myself unless, so I do this for you. I think one of the biggest things is to be flexible and not know where your role or where it's going to take you. Like, you may really think you want to be an American government teacher, and you may find out you really love middle school world history or something totally kind of random, because you just, and this is going to sound totally hippy dippy, but you're going to kind of just feel what's a good fit and feel like you're making a difference. And it might not be where you thought it was going to be. Like, you might have come in going, I'm really going to focus because my family was a military family, or I really like, and that's fine. But to bring context to it for your students and to make sure you're covering all the social and economic areas of it as well is just as important as like battlefronts and battle movements. And that's where you might take a class that you never thought was going to influence you the way it does, and then it totally changes who you are as a person. And you didn't know it was, so be open to taking classes that you didn't necessarily think you were going to take. One of the biggest classes besides yours, and that's not just me, butt kissing. One of the biggest classes that actually changed me was a philosophy interdisciplinary 400 level course I had to take as a graduation requirement. We all had to take one back when I was in school. I don't know what it is now, but it had to be in something. It had to be an interdisciplinary course. And I took a co-taught course on the Holocaust taught by a philosophy professor. And I went into it going,
Must be Noel Bahanian.
I'm going to just nail this because I know my Holocaust stuff. And I came out of that so twisted upside down and it's changed the way I taught. And I tell it every semester when I talk about various types of genocides. And we went through the ethics of it, and we went through Eichmann, and we looked at what's evil and who do you blame? And is it the soldier following orders who flipped the switch in the gas chambers, or the masterminds at the top? And it just blew my mind at all of the gray area in between. And I never thought about it like that before, necessarily, the Holocaust, like Hitler bad, you know what I mean? And it was, but to compare the Hitler Youth, and there were definitely people upset, but to compare the Hitler Youth to the Boy Scouts, like there were people who got up and walked out, and I was like, but no. And I tell my kids all the time, you're all sitting here, you all have your clothes on because you were taught from a young age, this is what you should do. And if you were in Germany at that time, you would have been taught, this is what you should, and to give that perspective. And it was a philosophy course, which, you know, inherently goes, it was so good about a topic I already thought I knew a lot about, you know what I mean? And I thought that was, I didn't take it for that purpose. And it surprised me at how much it changed me with all kinds of ways I teach things, of the ambiguity of the nature of humanity. So yeah, just think to not have, I mean, it's good to have goals, it's good to have a schedule, but to also let yourself reach outside your comfort zones and be surprised and take classes you didn't think you'd have an interest in, or become experts in stuff that you might not have known that you had a hankering towards. I mean, look at your journey. Look at you, labor union guy, then teaches African history classes because you went to, like, it just took you in a different path, you know, and it's become an evolving journey.
I now
for
do
you.
stuff on Puerto Rico and Puerto Ricans in this area, and I never would have thought. I do that. I'm learning Spanish now, so it's like
even 10 years ago, you would have never thought that. So you know,
I always think when I was in college, I didn't know where Puerto Rico was. I mean, which my wife is like, you didn't know. I said, I would have known it was somewhere in the Caribbean, but if you had said, which one of these islands is Puerto Rico, I'd have been like, not Cuba, and okay, I don't know. There's a lot of them. And she just, you know, she thinks that's the craziest thing in the world, because of course, you know, but you know, anyway. So that's great. So I'm gonna pause it here.
Okay.
And hang on. Wait.
Still recording.
Yeah, I know. Hang on. Okay, so I'm gonna stop.